In 2024, BYD sold 4.25 million vehicles. That number was everywhere, in headlines, in investor reports, in the speeches of Chinese government officials. BYD had overtaken Tesla. BYD had conquered Europe. BYD was the future of the car industry. There was just one problem. Nobody asked how many of those 4.25 million vehicles were actually bought by real people. Because when you look at what is happening behind the numbers, the fake sales, the hidden debt, the workers found in slavery, like conditions in Brazil, and the billions in government money that funded the entire rise, the story of BYD looks very different from the one you have been told. This is the story of the biggest scam in the car industry. Let's start with the number everyone keeps repeating. 4.25 million vehicles sold in 2024. The figure that made BYD the largest electric vehicle company in the world. The figure that sent shockwaves through Detroit, Stuttgart, and Tokyo. The figure that made investors pour billions into Chinese electric vehicle stocks and made Western governments panic about the future of their own car industries. That number is almost certainly wrong. Here is how the fraud works. And it is not a theory. China's own government has confirmed it. China's own state media has condemned it, and Chinese regulators summoned BYD and other automakers to explain it. At the end of every month, when sales targets are due, BYD dealerships register thousands of brand new cars in the name of shell companies and partner businesses they control. The cars get a registration plate. They get counted as sold. They trigger government electric vehicle subsidies, real money paid out by Beijing for every electric vehicle registered. And then the cars get quietly moved to secondary lots and sold months later as used vehicles with 0 kilometers on the odometer. Chinese regulators summoned BYD and other automakers to explain how brand new cars with no miles on the odometer were appearing on used car lots across the country. The practice became so widespread that the CEO of Chinese car maker Great Wall Motor publicly referred to it as the Evergrande of the auto industry, a reference to the high-profile collapse of the real estate empire. Although he never named BYD directly, everyone in the industry understood exactly who he was talking about. China's ruling Communist Party eventually condemned the practice directly. The People's Daily newspaper, the official mouthpiece of the Communist Party, called it a disguised form of price cutting that disrupts normal market order and described it as a striking example of involution, a Chinese term for a pointless race to the bottom that destroys everyone involved. Think about what this means. A consultant from the China Automobile Dealers Association estimated that 90% of the 436,000 used vehicles China exported in 2024 were zero-mileage cars, brand new vehicles registered as sold and then dumped on overseas markets. When BYD tells the world it sold 4.25 million vehicles last year, nobody outside the company knows how many of those were bought by real customers and how many were registered to shell companies to hit a monthly target and collect a government subsidy. That is not a sales figure. That is a number. And the fake sales are only the beginning. Let's talk about the money BYD says it owes and the money it actually owes. In January 2025, a Hong Kong-based accounting firm called GMT Research published a report that landed like a bomb in the financial press. GMT Research is not a fringe organization. They are the same firm that flagged the accounting problems at China Evergrande years before that company collapsed and wiped out hundreds of billions of dollars of investor value. GMT's forensic accounting found that BYD's officially reported net debt stood at just 27.7 billion yuan as of mid-2024, But the real figure, once hidden liabilities are included, could be 323 billion yuan, more than 10 times higher. GMT analyst Nigel Stevenson described the accounting as sleight of hand, warning that the hidden liabilities are clearly a form of financing that does not appear on the balance sheet. The mechanism works like this. BYD pays its suppliers on average 275 days after delivery. The global industry standard is 50 to 60 days. Instead of recording those unpaid invoices as debt, BYD classifies them as working capital, making the balance sheet look far healthier than it actually is. By mid-2023, BYD had issued 400 billion yuan worth of promissory notes to suppliers, essentially IOUs, that do not appear as debt anywhere in the official financial statements. In late 2024, leaked internal messages revealed that BYD had sent a letter to all of its suppliers demanding a 10% price reduction across the board for 2025. Not a request, a demand. Suppliers who refused faced losing one of their biggest customers. For companies already waiting 9 months to be paid, a forced 10% price cut was the difference between survival and bankruptcy. Once the hidden debt is reclassified correctly, BYD's net debt-to-equity ratio jumps from a manageable 15% to over 200%, the kind of leverage seen in distressed property developers, not major automakers. The same firm that spotted Evergrande before it collapsed is now saying the same things about BYD. And in China, nobody wants to say that out loud. Now let's talk about how BYD got here in the first place. Because the rise of BYD was not just engineering and vision. It was one of the largest state subsidy programs in industrial history. The Kiel Institute for the World Economy conducted a detailed study in April 2024 and identified BYD as the primary recipient of Chinese state funding, documenting roughly $3.7 billion in direct subsidies from 2018 to 2022 alone. But direct subsidies are only part of the story. BYD received free land for its factories, zero-interest loans from state-owned banks, tax breaks on research and development, guaranteed public contracts for buses and taxis in hundreds of Chinese cities, and subsidies paid directly to buyers, meaning every BYD sold in China came pre-discounted by the Chinese government. At its peak, analysts estimated BYD was collecting between $2,000 and $4,000 of public money for every single vehicle that left its factories. In 2016, one of the key years of BYD's supposed rise, the subsidies the company collected from Beijing were higher than the company's entire net profit. Without the Chinese government writing checks, BYD was not making money that year. It was losing it. This is why Mercedes cannot simply build better cars. This is why Toyota cannot simply cut costs harder. When your competitor's margin is calculated differently from yours, when the state is quietly topping up the difference between what a car costs to build and what it sells for, you are not competing in a market. You are competing against a government. And governments do not run out of money the way companies do, but here is where the story gets darker still. Because the cost of BYD's expansion was not only paid by Western car companies and Chinese taxpayers. It was also paid by 163 workers in a field in Brazil, workers who never agreed to pay anything at all. In December 2024, Brazilian labor authorities conducted a surprise inspection at the construction site of BYD's new factory in Camaçari, in the northeastern state of Bahia. The factory was supposed to be BYD's first electric vehicle plant outside Asia, a symbol of the company's global ambitions, built on the site of a former Ford plant the Americans had abandoned. What the inspectors found was not a symbol of the future, They found 471 Chinese workers who had entered Brazil on irregular visas, of whom 163 were immediately rescued from conditions that inspectors classified as analogous to slavery under Brazilian law. Workers were sleeping on beds without mattresses. One bathroom served 31 people, forcing workers to wake at 4 in the morning just to be ready for their shift. Food was stored next to construction materials in kitchens inspectors described as operating in insalubrious conditions. Workers had been living under armed surveillance. Some were alleged to have been trafficked into the country. More than 100 had their passports withheld by the contractors, meaning they could not leave even if they wanted to. Brazilian prosecutors filed a lawsuit alleging that the workers were victims of international human trafficking, brought to Brazil with visas that did not match their actual work. The prosecutors sought 50,000 reais in penalties per violation, multiplied by the number of workers affected. BYD was added to Brazil's official forced labor blacklist, a registry that restricts access to financing from Brazilian public banks. The listing came as part of a government update that added 169 new names to the registry. BYD's initial response was to terminate its contract with the construction firm responsible. Then it reversed that decision and kept the contractor. The company's public relations manager posted on social media suggesting there had been cultural misunderstandings. A spokesperson called the slavery classification inaccurate. 163 workers with no passports, sleeping without mattresses, sharing one bathroom between 31 people. That is not a cultural misunderstanding. So let's put it all together. BYD reports sales figures that include cars registered to shell companies and never sold to real customers. Its official debt is 27.7 billion yuan. Its real debt, according to the firm that predicted Evergrande, is 323 billion yuan. It received billions in state subsidies that allowed it to sell cars below cost for years, while its competitors paid their own way. It squeezed suppliers so hard that some were waiting 9 months for payment. It built its flagship overseas factory using workers who had their passports taken and who were found living in conditions a court described as slavery. And it did all of this while the world's financial press called it the most innovative company in the automotive industry. None of this means BYD makes bad cars. The technology is real. The battery innovation is convincing. The engineering is genuinely impressive. Wang Chuanfu built something remarkable from a $40,000 loan and a workshop in Shenzhen. But the story you have been sold, the story of a pure meritocratic rise, of innovation beating tradition, of Chinese engineers simply outthinking their Western rivals, is not the complete story. It never was. The complete story includes the subsidies that allowed BYD to price below cost for a decade. The hidden debt that makes the balance sheet look healthier than it is. The sales numbers that may include millions of cars never bought by real people. And the workers in Brazil who paid a price nobody volunteered to pay. BYD may well become the Toyota of the 21st century. The company is enormous. It is still growing in many markets, and its battery technology is genuinely ahead of most Western rivals. But the next time you see a headline about BYD selling 4 million cars, or conquering Europe, or being the company that changed everything, remember that behind every number there is a story. And the story behind BYD's numbers is one that the company has spent considerable effort making sure you never hear. If you got value from this video, subscribe. See you in the next one.